Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, September 30th through Sunday, October 6th, 2024. So at this point, it is probably a given that this eclipse season has impacted you in some kind of way. We all have some area of our charts, some area of our lives that are being kind of turned upside down right now. And honestly, this happens every 6 months or so when we get, two, sometimes three different eclipses for what we call in astrology eclipse season. So we've already had that full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces that highlighted the Pisces Virgo axis. That was 2 weeks ago now. This week we get the final eclipse of this season and really the final eclipse of this year. And this will be a new moon solar eclipse happening at 6 degrees Libra, and this will occur on Monday, September 30th. There is going to be a full moon 2 weeks after this week. That is almost a full moon lunar eclipse, but technically it's not. So this is the last eclipse of the year. So pretty much we're starting this week, and we're still in the beginning of Libra season, generally speaking. And we're beginning this in a really strange way. Everything is very odd and theatrical and dramatic. And I think many of us are feeling some kind of creepy vibes, not just because it's fall and, people are decorating for Halloween. This is sort of customary for fall on some level, but this is on a whole different level. Things are odd. We're out of place. We feel exiled. We feel different. We may not feel like our normal selves. This is because we have Venus, Mars, and the Sun all debilitated. They're all either in detriment or fall. I'm just looking at the inner planets, inner placements right now, not so much looking at the outer planets, although, we could talk about that as well. Uranus is in fall too. Jupiter's in detriment. So really there's a lot of debilitated placements. I guess that's kind of my point here. So combining eclipse season with so many debilitated placements, that's why I say we're feeling strange right now. I think those of us that are the most open to really strange or obscure energies, we're going to really thrive with a chart like this, with transits like this. But those of us that like things to be a little bit more simple, much more straightforward, stable, if we like things to just be as we expect them to be, it's just not going to be that simple. The more we can embrace this kind of weird energy, the more we can use this. It's really great for thinking outside the box. This is what I talked about in the last couple of forecasts as well. Being outside the box, that can feel lonely. It can feel strange. But being outside the box, that's excellent for innovation. We can have our own unique perspective. We can, gain new knowledge, maybe new skills, new appreciation, new perspectives. So this can be very exciting. And eclipse season in general, it's a time where there is dramatically increased activity. It's the potential for huge life changes, and so we're pretty much just going to talk about the eclipse in this forecast. However, there is one thing I wanted to mention before we actually get to that day, and that would be this chart, which is Monday, September 30th, 2024. This is the day where we're still experiencing this phenomenon that I actually talked about. It kind of spilled over from Sunday the 29th. And this is this triple conjunction that we have of Sun, Mercury, and the South Node, all at about roughly 6 degrees Libra. Here you can see Sun and Mercury are already at 7 degrees Libra. They're basically all conjunct, though, for Sunday and Monday. So I talked about in the last forecast how this is a turning point, and we may be prone to burnout. So much of that, spills over from Sunday. It continues to Monday. I just wanted to mention that, but pay attention to what kind of information you come across on Sunday and or Monday. You may find some piece of information that really changes your perspective, or I don't know, something that really changes things for you in a dramatic way. The communication is intensified at this time, but the communication, the information, the busyness, it may be too intense. That's why we're prone to burnout. So again, I recommend taking breaks, drinking lots of water, getting some electrolytes, you get some fresh air, spend time in nature, etc. Use common sense because these are intense times. Going forward to Wednesday, October 2nd, actually, quick plug before we talk about the eclipse. If you can be generous enough, if you can make a donation, or if you were interested in getting a personal reading from me, definitely hit me up. I always put my website information and my email in the description. So you can always check that out. I love doing readings. I've had a lot of fun with those lately, especially. But yeah, but even just watching, commenting, liking the video, that supports me as well. It allows me to continue posting content like this. So thank you. Anyway, so Wednesday, October 2nd, we've got this new moon solar eclipse happening at 10 degrees Libra. I went to the specific chart for you so you could see it. So this is actually for Wednesday, October 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. My brother corrected me because I always say Eastern Standard Time, like for all my videos. I don't know if any of you have noticed that. I've never really thought about it, but technically it's not Eastern Standard Time. It's Eastern Daylight Time. So now I know. But anyway, so 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is where we can see Moon and Sun conjunct at 10 degrees Libra, only 4 degrees away from the South Node. So this is a very exact, the Sun, Moon, and Earth are all pretty precisely lined up, and this is why we, of course, have a new moon solar eclipse. What's interesting, though, is that this eclipse is also conjunct Lilith, and to a slightly lesser extent, it's conjunct Mercury as well. So really, we've got a pretty impressive lineup. If you use an orb of, I don't know, like if you include everything between 6 and 11 degrees Libra, we've got South Node, Sun, Moon, Lilith, and Mercury all piled up here. So those of you that have major Libra placements, this is a big deal for you in particular, and really for all of us. We all have Libra in some part of our charts. So where is that for you? Okay, that would be something worth looking at. And it's pretty simple. It can be complicated, but let me simplify this for you. So let's say, first house has to do with your identity, your appearance, your approach to things. If your first house is Libra, or if you have Libra rising, you're going to have a dramatic new beginning, a new you. You're reinventing yourself, okay? And the same is true, like if it's second house, that's how you support yourself. That's your income. It's also what you spend money on as well, your investments and things like that. That's where there would be a huge new beginning for you around October 2nd, and etc. You just apply it, to whatever house it's in. But as always, again, if you have questions, definitely let me know, and I can give you some advice, or if it is more in depth, we can get a reading put together. But anyway, so any new moon, that's a new beginning. Usually I say a new moon is the least physically active part of the lunar cycle. I would say eclipses would be an exception, though, because this is an eclipse. It's just so intense. There can be dramatic new beginnings, dramatic endings as well, dramatic change in general. On a collective level, it's having to do with how we experience relationships and social interaction, but it's going to look dramatically different depending on your own unique chart and where is Libra. It's all about Libra right now. Okay, we're not in Virgo season anymore. We're not having this eclipse in Pisces like we did 2 weeks ago. This is all about Libra. Okay, so especially those of you that have Sun, Moon, Rising, or if you've got a Libra stellium, this is a big deal. You're going to feel this. It's hard for me to narrow down specifically how it will affect you, but it's definitely a new beginning. Let's break down what placements are conjunct this new moon. So it's not just a new moon, a new beginning in Libra. We're also channeling in the energy of Lilith here, since Lilith is tightly conjunct this new moon. Lilith energy is kind of this wild feminine energy. It's hard for me to explain. It's sort of like, I think within the realm of, the masculine and the feminine, there's this wild energy that the feminine has that the masculine energy just doesn't. I feel like, what this reminds me of is customer service. I don't know if you've ever worked customer service. Try dealing with like a really angry, irate man versus an angry, irate woman. In my personal experience, like I'm not scared of men that are angry. They'll just yell at you, which once you get over the fear of that, it's not a big deal. Women, though, like they get real wild. They'll get manipulative. You know what I mean? And these are, of course, generalizations, but I guess I'm just trying to illustrate that, like, I think women the feminine energy in general is capable of this like wildness that the masculine just isn't, if that makes sense. I think usually when we think of the divine feminine, we think of an energy that is very like well put together and very precise and very nuanced and very like soft and what's that word that everyone's been saying, demure or what have you. That's actually the perfect word from what I'm talking about. That does exist, and that is a huge chunk of the like divine feminine energy, but there's also this other part that can't be ignored that is in a way kind of the opposite. It's completely wild. That's what the Lilith represents. It's very sexual. It's very raw and earthy. It I think is a very kind of like natural energy, like it connects to nature and things like that. But it is wild, and it's a very dark energy. It's not bad. It's not evil, but it is dark, sexual, mysterious, wild. What other words could I use? That's the best I can really articulate about Lilith. But I'm just kind of going into that because that's the energy that is infused into this new moon. So it's really interesting. This is all taking place in Libra, which usually is a very like well put together and very conservative sign. Doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to do anything dramatic. But at the same time, we have this dramatic dark energy infused in the new moon at the same time. So it's kind of a balance. We may be pulled different ways. I think Libra is such an indecisive energy anyway. I don't know. I think we may be overwhelmed by the nuance. Like Libra is such a nuanced sign. They have this, analysis paralysis. I think they're one of the most analytical signs, as I've talked about in recent videos. So experiencing this new, huge burst of energy in Libra, I think it could fry us a little bit, especially because we're just coming off of that Mercury-Sun conjunction that I was just talking about. Mercury is still within orb of a conjunction to the new moon as well. So this means this is a very analytical, very mentally oriented energy. So I know I'm listing off a lot of different themes, but that's just how complex this new moon solar eclipse is. Like all of this is baked together. I'm imagining baking I don't really bake. I can't have sugar, so this is kind of grossing me out. But I'm picturing like baking like a snickerdoodle, but you're like making it like a brownie, cookie, cake. Like there's just so much involved that it's, breaking it down. There's all these different ingredients, all these different components. But that's kind of what we're experiencing, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is very brainy, intellectual, cerebral. It's about relationships. It's about the dark feminine energy. And by the way, when I'm talking about this dark feminine energy, we all have this. We all have Lilith somewhere in our charts. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Some charts will, of course, have this stronger than others. And I guess women might be more in touch with this energy, generally speaking. But again, we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. So we will all experience this. We all have this like wild, untamable sexual energy on some level. But again, for some of us, it's more prominent than others. But that may come out for us, especially if you have major placements around 10 degrees Libra. You're reaching a huge turning point and you're channeling this new beginning and channeling this dark energy from within you. And I really want to emphasize, dark does not necessarily mean bad or evil. Like, dark can just mean, it's having to do with parts of life that we would rather not look at, parts of life that aren't soft or easy. You know what I mean? Like, this wild, chaotic energy, I think many of us might just prefer to pretend like it doesn't exist because life would be simpler if it doesn't. But it is real, it's raw, and it's within us all. So these are the types of things we'll be experiencing on and around this new moon solar eclipse around Wednesday, October 2nd. Let me just look through the chart super quick just to double check that I didn't miss any other major aspects. You could argue Venus is semi-sextile this new moon solar eclipse. Semi-sextile is not a major aspect. It's not a Ptolemaic aspect, so I will gloss over that. However, Venus is still relevant because Venus is the ruler of this eclipse. Venus is ruling Uranus, on a side note, since Uranus is in Taurus. But Venus also rules all the planets, all the points, the placements that are in Libra right now. So Venus ruling over Sun, Moon, South Node, Lilith, and Mercury. That's a big deal. And the fact that Venus is not forming a major aspect to this eclipse and Venus is in detriment, that's showing that Venus is not necessarily capable of being a good hostess, so to speak, when it comes to like facilitating this whole conjunction, this whole phenomenon. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but it would be different if Venus was in even Aquarius or Gemini and like trining this. This would make this whole experience much smoother. But because Venus is in detriment and not forming a major aspect, it's going to be potentially a rough ride. We also have to take into consideration. I've been doing this all day where I keep like making weird word salads, and I don't know why. But we also have to take into account that this new moon solar eclipse is conjunct the south node. A new moon solar eclipse could be conjunct the north node if it were in Aries, but it's not. It's by the south node. That does have implications. The south node is a dark energy as well, a little bit like Lilith, I guess. South node has to do with our past, and the south node represents kind of a decline, and I don't want to get super bogged down by details when it comes to explaining what the nodes are, because it is a little bit complex. But basically, if I can sum it up super quick, all the planets, the moons, the sun, they are all roughly on the same plane, so to speak, almost like a disc, like a CD or something. I've been making CDs lately, but anyway, but they're not exactly all precisely on that sort of disk or on that layer. Each moon, planet, etc., they will dip slightly above and slightly below this disk as they journey around the sun or journey around the planet if it's a moon, whatever it is. So in this case, we're talking about the moon, the lunar nodes. The south node represents the area where the moon dives under, it crosses that plane, so to speak, and it goes underneath. So it's literally it almost is sort of like fall in a way. It's the point where you are declining, at least in space, which I know that gets a little weird to think about. There's not really an up and down. I believe it's called the like galactic north, galactic south, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of like up and down. So this is where the moon is like going into the underworld, so to speak. So it is dark. It is a decline. Kind of like a detriment energy. So my point is, having this new moon solar eclipse conjunct the south node, that could be, I don't want to say problematic. I don't want to make this sound like a negative thing, because we can utilize this, but I'm seeing some dark energies, and I don't listen to any other astrologers, so I don't know what they're saying about this. Maybe you can cross-reference. I would love to hear it, actually, if you have listened to some other astrologers. If you could say, like, is my take dramatically different? Is it similar? I don't want to listen to other astrologers because I want my thoughts to be my own. I don't want to, like, subconsciously copy anyone else. You know what I mean? But my take on this is that this is a dark energy. Usually I associate Libra with Venus. Usually it's like a light, kind of playful, intellectual energy. Usually it's a good time. This can be a good time too, but this is different. This is detriment energy. It's debilitated. It's, it's dark. Just all of it. All these debilitated planets, Lilith, South Node, even the eclipse itself is, it's an eclipse. It's darkening. The sun, new moon solar eclipse, right? Yeah. So yeah, this to me looks very dark. We're channeling in something that we may prefer not to look at. So I hate to just leave on that note. It's not entirely bad. We can utilize this, but that's kind of what I see. There are some like rough aspects that this makes other than what I've talked about. So I mean, you could argue that if you use an orb of 5 degrees, then the new moon solar eclipse squares Mars, which that wouldn't make this any better. That would just add volatility, and it would indicate that we're fighting in a different way. Mars is debilitated in Cancer, so we're thinking outside the box when it comes to what we are fighting about, what we're fighting for and how we fight for it. We may be fighting for new things that we haven't thought about before. We may be fighting for a feeling, or fighting for our families or with our families. These are the different kind of interpretations you can get from Mars in Cancer. But having that square with Mars, that shows a lot of contentious energy, a lot of tension, and a need for action, a need for change. And I thought there was one more. You could say this is quincunx Saturn, but we're not messing around with quincunxes on this channel right now. Anyway, that's pretty much what I have for you for this week. Speaking of quincunxes, though, next week there's going to be a yod, which is 2 quincunxes and a sextile. That's going to be real wild to talk about. And there's a whole other laundry list of things happening next week. One planet turns retrograde, another planet turns direct next week. There's a first quarter moon that's going to be really intense, because I always say the whole lunar cycle is intensified during eclipse season. It's not just the actual eclipses. It's not just the new moon and the full moon. The whole lunar cycle is intensified. So that first quarter moon, that's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be intense, maybe even more intense than the new moon solar eclipse. And we do have one planet changing signs next week as well. So I do hope you join me. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great week. I'll see you next week.